Hello, my name is Hriday Sukhadia, and I'm a student at John Vanley Catholic Secondary School. It's a great school, great staff, great people, I love it. But the best part, it's got Wi-Fi. See, that's one of the best things about being a millennial today, is we've got Wi-Fi. Who doesn't love Wi-Fi? But see, we've also got a lot of advanced technology these days, such as smartphones, laptops thinner than textbooks. Can you imagine that? But with all this advanced technology, these great things, but with all these pros, we've got a lot of cons. See, being a millennial, it comes with unwanted social pressure. And that means some of us can't truly be ourselves. And with all that pressure comes with the idea of just fitting in with society. And some of us just can't do that. Some of us fit in society means we can't truly be ourselves. And that's just something that no one wants to do. You don't want to pretend to be someone you're not. I speak from experience. But fitting in society is just overrated, If you're always trying to be normal, you'll never know what you can truly become. And so, basically, when I was in grade 7, my family moved from Ontario to Minnesota, in America, because of my dad's work. It was a business trip. We had left everyone behind, and it was terrible. I completely hated it. I had no friends there, and I had trouble fitting into the society. I was alone for almost a year and a half, had about no friends. But don't get me wrong, it was terrible for me. And the way that I got over it, but at the same time, I'm also very glad that I went to Minnesota for that year and a half, because I figured out who I was as a person and truly identified as myself. And that was and media helped me a lot through that. See, media helped me identify my true self and helped me figure out who I really was. See, with the help of movies, comics, music, literature, more comics. I really like comics and TV shows and just all that good stuff that media helped me. See, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Before I moved to Minnesota, I was a phony. I was fake. I acted like someone who I was not, and that was only because I tried so hard just to fit in with society and with the people at my school. But when I got to Minnesota, I got into all of these different types of media. I got into music, books, TV shows. This was mainly because I was alone, but while I spent a lot of time being alone, I also found all this media. And I really liked it because after a while, I realized that I can personally relate to it. See, I found different ways to relate to all these characters. And so I've come to the conclusion that there's 3 main forms of media that influence us youths as millennials. Music, literature as in books or comics, and movies and TV shows. But one of the biggest factors or influences to millennials today is music. And the reason that is because it speaks to everyone, It's a universal language, and songs are usually written by the artist's perspective, and from current or past experiences. This is why so many people can relate to music, because they're written by humans who have also gone through the same things that some people could be going through right now. And that just means that, whatever you're facing, you're not facing alone. For example, Justin Bieber released a new album, Purpose, was very successful. He sang about how it's okay to be yourself and that you can make mistakes and you don't have to live up to anyone's expectations. It doesn't matter what society thinks about you, but how you truly feel about yourself. And that, to me, when I listened to it, that just hit me on a personal note, and I realized that I didn't have to live up to anyone's expectations. I could be who I really was meant to be. And the best part about Justin Bieber is because he's so popular among the youth, his music can influence almost everyone, and it's just a great thing. Another example, Linkin Park. The lead vocalist, who's also the songwriter, he wrote about his expressions with depression, social pressures, and drug abuse, and these are all obstacles that teenagers can face through isolation and stuff. And knowing that they can connect with famous people like so is probably one of the most amazing feelings, because you're not going through it alone. There's someone else going out there who's going through the exact same thing, and that can help you to truly be yourself. Another great example this is a little biased, but I think that Imagine Dragons probably make one of the most relatable musics to millennials today, because a lot of millennials today are having trouble fit in with society. And because of this, they're being isolated, and isolation, it just leads to sadness and depression. And so basically, this is a little bit biased on my half, but when I was in Minnesota, I got into Imagine Dragons, and their lead vocalist, who also wrote most of the music, Dan Reynolds, he wrote about past experiences about depression, and because I had no friends in Minnesota, I was also feeling a little bit depressed. And so basically, his music really motivated me and touched me in a way that other music couldn't, and he pulled me out of depression, and I'm very thankful for that. But I feel like he can relate to a lot of people who can't, because today in society, a lot of millennials are being isolated because they can't fit in, but they can't truly be themselves. And so it's just amazing how people can connect to songs on an emotional level and know that whatever you're going through is already been gone through by someone else, and that you don't have to be through the journey alone. So music may be very popular and very inspirational, but something else that's slowly becoming even more popular is literature, especially comics. See, before the millennials, comics was more of a nerd thing. If you were caught reading comics in the halls, you were outcasted by bullies, you were beat up, you were called names, you were called nerd, you felt pretty bad about yourself. But in reality, comics allowed kids to relate to people that just allowed them to be themselves when there was no bullies, when they were just with their friends. And it was a good feeling, because you can relate to a superhero, and that feeling was just awesome when you were children. But now in the age of millennials, comics are being brought to the silver screen, and that's just increasing the popularity. And so kids are going back and picking up comics, and especially in our society, comics can help a lot of young people struggling to be their true selves figure out who their true selves were. For example, one of the most known superheroes, Spider-Man, most youth can relate to him because in the comics, he's just a teenager. He goes to high school, he struggles with talking to girls, he's a nerd, he sucks at sports, he's bullied. You can relate to him on a personal level. But because his alter ego, Spider-Man, is so popular, it gives you that extra feeling of goodness that, I can relate to him, who's also a superhero. If he can be his true self, why can't I? And so, because having something in common with a superhero, it helps people be who they really are. When I first moved to Canada in 2004, I was a complete outcast. I had no idea about the culture, no idea what to do, but reading some of these comics growing up, I realized that I relate to them, and that helped me truly become myself in society. Also, reading Spider-Man helped me kind of be myself around others, and at the time. See, in Minnesota, I experienced the power of comics again, and I got back into comics, and Spider-Man, of course I would get back into him because he helped me through a lot, and I could just relate to him on a personal level, which made things feel great. Another popular comic is X-Men, but X-Men are a little bit different. They were a bunch of mutants who were trying to just coexist peacefully with humans, but humans wouldn't allow that. They wouldn't allow them to fit in with society. And so what the mutants and the X-Men taught us is that it's completely okay to be different from everybody. You don't have to fit in. You don't have to act normal to fit in with society. You can be whoever you are. And the fact that you can connect to them and connect to a group of superheroes like them is just even cooler. So, because I also in Minnesota picked up some X-Men comics, but the thing was, I was the only Indian in Minnesota, in my city, in my school, and so that made me also be a little bit of an outcast. But after reading the X-Men, I realized that no one cares, that I shouldn't care what anyone cares in society, and that I'm Indian. That doesn't matter, They helped me figure out that I'm not alone in this. There are other people outside in the world who are even facing more struggles than me, and so they helped me overcome that. And some other, it doesn't have to be only comics that can relate to millennials, You've got popular books like The Fault in Our Stars or Harry Potter. it just, Harry Potter can relate to a lot of children, who have lost their parents and are struggling to keep up with society, as Harry was. He was living because they don't have any parents, as they could have experienced the same tragedy as he had, as they lost them. And so it's just cool to know that, if society can accept them, why can't society accept us for who we are as people? It just helps you truly be who you are. And then The Fault in Our Stars comes, and it's even better because it can relate to those youths that have certain diseases and are looked upon differently. It shows that you don't, it means, you're not alone. Society can't, if society can't accept you, then that sucks for them, because that's just a big loss. They have to accept them as a person, but not what they have as a disease. It just helps you be truly who you are. And when media shows that it's okay to be who you are, you're just willing to be more of yourself around others and in society. Now, what about the population of millennials that don't read at all? What about them? Well, lucky for them, they have movies and TV shows. Now, that's just a great thing, because almost every famous book and every comic is turned into a movie or a TV show. For example, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's just everything that I talked about comics on the big screen. If you don't read, these movies can talk to millennials about how society doesn't, you don't have to care about what society thinks about you. You can fit in being different. It doesn't matter. It's even cooler to be different, And so these are some popular movies, Spider-Man Homecoming. The reason it was so successful is because teens could relate to Peter Parker, because he went to high school. He struggled with girls. He got decent grades. He came home and then became Spider-Man, and it was just that cool connection again, that you have something in common with a superhero, that you can truly be yourself. Superbad, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Outsiders, Breakfast Club, great movies for millennials. Teens can truly relate to that, because, in Superbad, they're a little bit, they're two nerds, and basically they go to the party for the first time. And teens who go to the party for the first time, they feel awkward, this is your first party, but knowing that people in media have gone through the same experience as you, it helps you. And The Outsiders, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The Breakfast Club is especially one that is great for millennials to watch, as you can properly relate to them and learn about how society can accept you for who you truly are, and you don't have to bother with all that fitting in bull crap. And then there's Harry Potter again, which if you don't, it's there. And then you got your Disney, Brave, teaches you that it's okay to, fight for something that other people don't believe in. It's okay to think in different stuff other than society. If society thinks one way, you don't have to necessarily follow in the way society does. You can follow your own opinions. And then you got Mean Girls, that also relates to a lot of girls who are isolated and newly moved to different places. Beauty and the Beast, they're all great ways to connect to a person through a personal level. And if you don't watch movies, then you got your TV shows. TV shows are probably also another great example of helping millennials become who they truly are and not worrying about what society thinks. Teen Wolf, especially for me, when I moved to USA, I also had no friends, but because I started watching Teen Wolf through social media, I made friends, and because TV shows have such great fandoms, you can truly be yourself online, and that can also carry out to real life, because you know that there's others out there just like you who love the same stuff as you, and that can influence you to be yourself. And you can also relate to some of the characters. For example, Styles in Teen Wolf, he is a dorky kid who is struggles with girls just like Peter, and you can relate to a character like him, or other girls and boys in the show that just help you truly be who you are. You don't have to live up to society's expectations. You can be who you are. So yeah, that's being a millennial is pretty awesome. Hope this helps anyone who's struggling figuring out who they truly are as a person. Thank you. 15